What a story in the Champions League. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Arsenal transfers and look ahead, of course, to the weekend with what is, as always, the Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show. Join you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you as always for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. It's incredibly appreciated. I hope you've had a fantastic week so far. It's Thursday, one of the best days of the week. You can look ahead. It's Friday tomorrow, and then it's the weekend, and then it's the penultimate match of the Premier League season for Arsenal. A few more teams have got an extra game to play, of course, next midweek. But Arsenal are in plenty of action at the moment and looking forward, of course, to what is hopefully going to be a very, very important game at Old Trafford, in which Arsenal will be, without question, overriding favourites to claim a win and take the title race to that final game of the Premier League season. But good morning to those of you in the chat box that have welcomed and witnessed trophies being won by your fine club. Not everyone can celebrate trophies, of course. It is an honour which is only given to a select few. We have, in our time, experienced trophies under this manager and previous managers, but others have sadly not experienced that same effect. So never, ever forget the feeling of what it's like when your team, be it whether you're playing for them or just supporting them, just remember and hold that feeling in you, in your chest, in your soul. Just remember the feeling of what it's like winning a trophy, because goodness me, it feels great. And I could not imagine, I could not bear witness to somebody who sadly has never, ever in their entire existence experienced the feeling, asterisk except a preseason trophy, of never winning something regarding silverware. Just a moment, if you would, of silence, just to think about those that may never, will never, should never win a trophy. Good morning to those joining us in the chat box. Peekahoo, Damien, Steve, Matt G, George, Carlton, Rich, James, Sergio, Glenn, Martin, Maximius, NSW, Damien, Darren, Barry, Alpha Wolf, Dan, Lorenzo, Shari, Stephen, Pelzer, Brad, Roy, Stevie, World Citizen. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be in the world. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. We kick off today's show, of course, by telling you to drop a like on the video. It would be very much appreciated if you could, helping us to reach 1,000 likes every single day on the show. We've been doing it all the way through the second half of this season, and we're looking to continue it through until the end of it and beyond into the summer transfer window as well. So please do help us out. But we kick off with the story of yesterday, which of course was Real Madrid reaching the Champions League final, courtesy of two extremely late goals from Joselu. Now, yesterday's show, actually, I was asked the question of who I kind of follow, if you like. Which other teams do I like outside of my beloved passion and diehard support of Arsenal? And then we talked about other nations, other countries, where there are other teams, and what kind of teams would you, if they're playing, would you like? And I told you yesterday that my Spanish team was Espanyol. Now, Joselu is actually on loan from Espanyol because they got relegated down to the second tier of Spanish football, and Joselu was kind of a player that they needed to get off their books and helped with some monetary gains with the loan fee that Real Madrid paid. Well, goodness gracious me, what a story for Joselu in the Champions League. Absolutely fantastic, brilliant scenes, and it was just utterly, it just, for me, summed up football, summed up why we love this sport so much, seeing a story like this and just seeing Bayern Munich crumble and Harry Kane in near tears. And not only that, but they were robbed, arguably at the end, a very, very tight offside call, saving Real Madrid. I don't really know what to think about that. I think that the linesman's had an absolute nightmare putting his flag up that early for a call as tight as it was. But I'm taking it. I absolutely love to see it because all Bayern did was moan when we played them. And, that we had a bit of a contentious decision go Bayern's way, of course, against us. So who knows what might have happened if it had gone the other way. So Thomas Tuchel, though, absolutely bottling. If you want to talk about bottling, the decision-making of Tuchel at the end of that game will rightfully be judged and seen to be what it was, which was a horrific decision-making at the end of that game, which cost them ultimately. Sticking with Champions League, just a point on, we talked about this, I think, but just to give you kind of full clarity, because I did a little bit of digging and research into this, Arsenal will be in pot 2 of the Champions League next season, no matter what happens. So even if Arsenal were to win the Premier League, Arsenal will still be in pot 2. What does this mean? Well, to be honest, it doesn't really mean loads, to be fair. So the way in which the Champions League changes next season is obviously in the first stage of the competition. It is no longer a it's no longer a kind of draw where you're seeded up against teams like one team from pot 1, one team from pot 2, one team from pot 3, one team from pot 4, and you play them home and away. Now there are 4 pots in the Champions League, of which Arsenal are in. However, we will play teams from pot 2 as well. So you are drawn against 8 teams, 8 different teams, 2 from pot 1, 2 from pot 2, 2 from pot 3, 2 from pot 4. One of those teams you will play at home, one of those teams in the pot you will play away. So you will play 8 games across the first stage of the Champions League round robin league system. All games are, of course, involved against one another because it's a table system. And so, yes, 8, Alex, in the Champions League. Yes, 8 games, not 6 games. 2 more games next season in the Champions League first stage. Even more matches. Crazy. And then the top 8 teams of the league after those 8 matches will qualify immediately for the last 16. Teams ranked from 9th to 16th in that league will instead go through to a knockout qualifying round that will play off against one another. 9th will play 16th, I believe. 8th will play 15th, and so on and so forth, to get through to the knockout rounds of the last 16 of the competition. So it could be that you play not only 2 extra games in the first stage, but 4 extra games, because there could be a last 32 qualifying game that you need to play as well. So basically, you want to do well in the Champions League so you can avoid playing extra games. It's chaos. I kind of like it. Not going to lie. I think people are going to get on board with this next season. I think there's a lot to enjoy about it. You're going to see a lot more high-profile games a lot earlier on, and it creates a lot more jeopardy, if you like, about the group stage. And it's actually really simple. I know I probably made it sound really confusing, but basically, we're in pot 2. We will play 2 teams from pot 1, 2 teams from pot 2, 2 teams from pot 3, 2 teams from pot 4. One of those teams from each pot will be at home. One of those teams from each pot will be away. The draw is done by a computer. It's not done by the balls in the pots and picking them out, because it would be too complicated. So the computer does it, and then the top 8 go straight through to the last 16, and then teams that finish 9th to 16th will play off against one another in a qualifying round to make up the last 8 teams of the last 16. You can play teams from your same nation across the competition. So as Pat says here, can you play teams from the same country? Yes. Yes, you can. So we will and could be up against Liverpool or Manchester City, who are both in pot 1, by the way. We could play both of them in the first stage of the competition. Very possible that could happen. So worth bearing that in mind as well. And of course, in the last 16, you can also play teams from your same from the same position. And into the last 16, teams are seeded as well. So the team that finishes first and the team that finishes second will not be able to play one another until at least the final, if they were to win all their games as well. So they seed the actual last 16 as well. So very, very, I guess that's more complicated, but I think it's going to be quite cool. I'm looking forward to it. Anyway, moving into more Arsenal-specific news, and talks with Amario Cozier-Duberry are said to be ongoing. However, Newcastle have made an offer to the young winger. His contract, of course, with Arsenal runs out at the end of this season. Arsenal are fighting to try and keep one of their most talented young players at the club. We've talked about him a little bit in the last week, and I've mentioned that I do think that, sadly, we're in a situation where we have not been able to give him opportunities, or rather we've chosen at times not to give him opportunities. The Wolves game at the end of last season being a big one, and that may stand us very much in a tricky position when it comes to trying to get him to sign a new deal. I hope that we can, because he's a very talented player, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. That's Fabrizio Romano's information that you saw. Meanwhile, Nicolas Pepe, remember him? Well, Nicolas Pepe will be a free agent in the summer. He is leaving Trabzonspor after, of course, signing with them after he left Arsenal. And he will be a free agent because Trabzonspor are not keeping Nicolas Pepe on into next season. And he will need to find a new club. And someone will take him on a free. So I still laugh at when you get Arteta's biggest critics kind of turning around and saying, I can't believe he didn't give Pepe a chance, when, let's be honest, the guy can't even, keep a contract to Trabzonspor. So I think we know who got the right decision there. And meanwhile, in transfer news that is certainly appealing toward myself, Xavi Simons, according to Bild, is said to be available and on the market potentially this summer for around 60 million euros, so around 52-ish million pounds. And this is a really, really good bit of news for me because Xavi Simons, as I've mentioned before, would be my dream wide player that I'd like Arsenal to sign in the summer. I think he'd offer great depth. I think he'd offer really good quality to a number of different positions, including, of course, that right wing role that we really do need some depth and competitive force with for Saka. So Xavi Simons, 60 million. I think I'd go and pay that straight away, frankly. I think I'll go and do that right now. And lastly, Mikel Arteta has opened up in a big interview with the Arsenal website. You can read the entire back and forth with the Arsenal media team, of course, on the Arsenal webpage. I'm going to read you the last couple of comments. Basically, he talks about the entire season, but I think the most relevant thing to talk about is the part where he talks about the final bit of the season. And he says, we are right in there with 2 games to go. We need to do what we have to do. We need to go to Old Trafford and perform really well to earn the right to win the game. And if we do that, we're going to be another step closer, but there's still a lot to do. I'm just in a state at the moment where I just think how I have to feel right now to be in the best place to beat Manchester United. I'm really enjoying the journey to win. We weren't in this position for many years, and we are right now. And I think it's our duty, our obligation to really enjoy it, be the best we can be, and see where it takes us. And it's great to see Arsenal where they are right now. I was listening to the Arscast Extra this morning, actually, and listening to Andrew talk about the entitlement that he and I don't feel. Arsenal are in no way entitled to win trophies whatsoever. And I will enjoy this season for what it is, if whether we win or whether we don't win the season, the title, because we aren't entitled to anything. I really would love to, but I appreciate what we're doing. I have thoroughly enjoyed this campaign. I've had such a good time watching Arsenal this season, and if just losing one single game in 2024 and picking up, if we end up picking up 50. I think it's something like 52 of an available 57 points that were available and still don't win the league. What more can you do, eh? So I think that it's a really good place that we're in right now, and we are moving towards the goals of wanting to win. It's not saying I don't want to win. I do. I just can't get behind the whole raise your standards thing because it's just a little bit, I find it a bit cringy, to be honest. But yeah, it's been a great season and I'm looking forward to it. And I hope next season is going to be even better. I'm looking forward to it. Right, let's go to part 2 then. And your questions. Got a few to answer, I'm sure, right after this. Okay, part 2, which is the part of the show, of course, where we jump into the chat box and tackle some of your thoughts, your feelings, your queries, and your questions. Let's scroll up because I always end up missing a few. Chunho was asking, how is each pot in the Champions League determined? So it's determined based upon coefficient. So depending on what your coefficient is of all the teams that qualify, the teams with the highest UEFA coefficients will go into pot 1. The next highest will go pot 2, pot 3, pot 4, and so on. So Arsenal have 72 points at the moment in terms of coefficients. So I think we're something like 22nd or 23rd in terms of European teams with coefficients. So Bayer Leverkusen, by the way, are winning the Bundesliga. They still are yet to be decided. If they win the Europa League, I think they will be in pot 1, pushing Barcelona into pot 2. So it doesn't really, from the looks of things, though, it doesn't really matter what pot you're in because you're going to play 2 teams from each pot anyway. So I don't think it really matters. If anything, being in pot 2 is probably better because it means you've got more choice of the pot 1 teams, if that makes sense. Because if you're in pot 1, you're pushing a team into pot 2. But if you're in pot 2, you'd argue some of the pot 2 teams would be, one of them might be pushed up into the, for instance, Bayer Leverkusen, for example. You know, I know Bayer Leverkusen have been fantastic, but on paper, you'd be like, before this season, at least you'd be like, well, Bayer Leverkusen, I'd probably rather play them than Barca. Maybe not now, but you see what I mean? Like, we're forcing, there are teams being moved into different positions in different pots. So I think being in pot 2 is actually maybe a slight advantage, maybe. Maybe I'm talking out my backside, but I think I see that the theory is there somewhere. Let's go to Darian says 60 million. I'll contribute my savings to the transfer fee to get Xavi Simons. Squeezy Cake says buy Simons 100%. Carl says get your money out there then, Tom. Absolutely. Leon says mad because Pepe wasn't really a bad player. He had a really good season for us, but I think his attitude maybe was the issue. I don't know if it was his attitude. I don't think that was necessary. I just don't think he was good enough. Sadly. Sally says, Tom's wife, I wonder if he's thinking about other women. Tom, Xavi Simons, 60 million. I mean, I'm not that much enjoying the idea of Arsenal signing Xavi Simons. I don't think G needs to be worried at all. Let's go to Greg, who says, everyone plays games for the same difficulty. Everyone plays a game with a team from each pot. It doesn't matter which pot you get put into, and that doesn't affect the team that you're playing. And I kind of guess that's what I was saying there and reflecting on that. Kieran says, noticed in the last few weeks that Saliba has been more inclined to take the ball into midfield. Do you think this is something that just happens over the game, or if there is more into it? Do you think he's being instructed, for instance? Do we think that Saliba's being asked to do it? I think that he's gained more confidence of late as well. And so, yeah, there's definitely potential. I think that there's some instructions there to progress more as a player. Gavin says, I'm late, Tom. Can you start again? Okay. No, of course I can't start again, Gavin. Goodness gracious me. Do you think the world revolves around you? Alex says, it seems mad to me to lose both Okonkwo and Hein. Is there any hope for either talented young goalkeeper? Surely either would be great third choices as well. Okonkwo's contract runs out at the end of this season. So there isn't really an expectation that he is going to be re-signed or renewed. From my understanding, from what I've been told, there isn't a feeling at the moment that Okonkwo will be extended. In regard to Hein, I think Hein needs to probably find a move away from Arsenal. He's a decent goalkeeper. He's 22 years of age now. You don't want to be in a situation like, do you remember Matt Macey? Matt Macey only left the club. Just let me double check on the time. He left the club in 2021, which is obviously only 3 years ago. He's now 29. He was 26 when he left. He's currently playing for Portsmouth, who got promoted but didn't play a single game all season. He played for Portsmouth a lot last season while he was on loan from Luton. Didn't play a single game for Luton. Went to Hibs, played 35 games, left and went to Luton, didn't play any games. And now he's 29. Like, you don't want to be in that situation. So if I was Carl Hein, I'd be looking for a move and to try and find something next year. Ben says, who do you think takes the biggest individual step next season? I can't say Saka because that would be too easy. It's a good question, actually. Who do we think will be the, not breakout star, because I think that's the wrong phrasing, but who do we think is going to be the most improved, the biggest surprise? I think you'd say this season, it's either Gabriel, because obviously I think he's arisen this season above Saliba, which is a hell of a jump, because obviously last season Saliba was top, and he's been top again. I think Gabriel has probably taken that biggest leap of existing players. Like, you can't really pick new signings, otherwise you'd pick Havertz, but of existing players, I think you'd look at Gabriel as maybe taking the biggest step. Ben White has definitely been has taken another big step forwards. Next season, Andrea says, Loga says Timber. Andrea says Martinelli. Again, Martinelli's got to rediscover, I think, some of his best form. Timber, it's a bit of a cheat, I guess, because he has been here, but he's not really played many minutes at all. Amira says Kivior. Kivior might not be a decent, might not be such a bad shout. Not a bad one whatsoever. And could Havertz go to an even higher level next season, I guess, is is the question we might ask ourselves too. So, yeah, it's an interesting question. I think this season, Gabriel, but next season, it's a really tough one, Ben. I'm not sure who I would pick. If Fabio Vieira stays, maybe there's scope for him to take that step. Maybe Raya, it's not a bad shout. Edrasas as well. Maybe Raya really does convince everybody that he was indeed the right keeper for us to go for. Jordan says, considering Manuel Neuer's mistake last night, do you think Arsenal fans are too harsh on Raya? It's a really well-timed question. When they say things like he'll never reach a top goalkeeper's level because of the mistakes he makes. Absolutely, Jordan, you're so spot on with this. And I've said this before. I said this on the show the other week. I said Alisson, Edison made mistakes when they first arrived at Liverpool and when they first arrived at Man City. They happen. Goalkeepers make these errors, and people talk about the errors that Raya has made, and he's made, a fair few this season, but he's also been very good, and he's commanded his box excellently. His cross collections have been second to none. He's probably the best in the world, arguably, at that this season. His numbers certainly back that up. So, yeah, I do think there is always going to be extra scrutiny on keepers when they make errors, but I do think that it's a really good point to make, seeing a goalkeeper as seasoned and as experienced as Neuer making that mistake. Is really important. Ashton says, I think we're disrespecting by not including Martin in this shown levels. Now, I think this is individual, Ashton. From my perspective, I've always known Martin Ødegaard to be a world-class player. I said he was world-class last season. He's continued his world-class form this season. He hasn't scored as many goals as he did this season compared to last season, but I think he has been better. But I'm not showing any disrespect from my end because I've always been on the Ødegaard hype train and always been saying that this guy is a world-class standard. It's others maybe that have been disrespecting our Norwegian prince. Jean says, I really was impressed of Neuer yesterday. He was exceptionally good until that moment. Yeah, and it is that until, isn't it? Absolutely. Mark says, Alisson and Edison continue to make mistakes. Everyone, even the best, make mistakes. The goalkeeping position is definitely hard. Matt G says, Tom, what have you made of Szoboszlai's season at Liverpool, and do you think that he would have done better at Arsenal? No, I don't think he would have done better at Arsenal. And the reason why I don't think he would have done better at Arsenal is because he's not going to play what I believe to be his best position. Where you're seeing him play at Liverpool in this kind of advanced eight role alongside McAllister and playing as sometimes the most advanced in the midfield, that's not his best position. Szoboszlai will always be a wide playmaker to be. He played so fantastically on the left for Salzburg and then moved into that role a fair amount for Leipzig as well. That, for me, on that left-hand side is where you will get the best of Szoboszlai. But he's never going to play there for Liverpool because they've got Diaz and they've got Gakpo. And he's never going to do that for Arsenal because we have Martinelli and we've got Smith Rowe and now we've got Trossard. It was never going to happen for Szoboszlai in those areas. I think maybe if he was playing where Ødegaard is, maybe he'd be doing better than he is currently doing for Liverpool. He wouldn't be doing better than what Ødegaard is doing. But yeah, for me, Szoboszlai is sadly misused since moving to the Premier League. Started off really well and has fallen off a cliff. And I think it's just because the system and the team and the philosophy is not suited. Maybe Arne Slot comes in and unlocks him. Maybe he will be their player to improve the most next season. Let's go to Tom says, Fuad says, Tom, do you think Martinelli should watch Vinny Jr.'s movement coming from the left-hand side, getting more involved? Yeah, I think so. But obviously, Vinny Jr. is a left-footed player, it's worth pointing out. So there are going to be differences between what Martinelli and what Vinny Jr. ultimately do as players. And so for that reason, I think, is Vinny Jr. left-footed? No, he's right-footed, isn't he? Oh, what am I talking at my absolute backside with that? But I still think there's differences between them. I look at Vinny Jr. as I just see he's much more technically advanced than Martinelli is, and it's weird. Martinelli for me is more of kind of a sprinter, more of a runner, driver in behind stylistically, and Vinny Jr. is more of your technical, low center of gravity, twist and turn, and without a doubt has got pace, just running behind, but is got more of a varied play. So in roundabout, yes, he probably could actually learn a bit from Vinny Jr. We went round the houses a bit there, but we got there in the end. Yeah, so you're probably actually right. He probably could. I just think there is some differences between them that will make it more tricky for Martinelli. And also stylistically with Arsenal and Real Madrid, I think you're going to get a lot more opportunities playing for Real Madrid in those areas, whereas in the Premier League, you're not necessarily going to get that. And that's why I think that Vinny Jr. often tends to struggle when he comes up against the likes of Kyle Walker, for instance, So I think there are perhaps differences in the opposition that makes it slightly different stylistically for both players. But I think there's some things he could learn for sure. He's a fantastic player, Vinny Jr. Keiko says, always tune in, but first time commenting and questioning about our backup goalkeeper situation with Ramsdale and Hine leaving. If it was up to you, how would you address the situation? I think I'd go for the more experienced figureheads. I'd try and find our version of Stefan Ortega. That's what I'd love. I think obviously City have got very lucky with Stefan Ortega and with that deal. I think he's been far better than anybody expected Ortega to be. But I think that is the right way to go. I wouldn't go younger. I'd go older. I think I'd bring in more experience, a player that's good in the dressing room. That's what I think I would bring in to the team. Who that is a tricky one. Szczesny is being talked about. So yeah, maybe that end of the spectrum is what I would go for. Kyle says, what do you think about Estavo, the Palmeiras? Is that the guy that Chelsea are closing in on a potential deal for? I can't say I know anything about him, even if that's the right player. I can't say I know anything about him, mate. So sorry, Carl, I can't give you any insight there. Ashton says, finally realised what I was trying to say, Tom. Disrespectful was the wrong word. I meant last year there was question marks about how Martin Odegaard was in big games. And this year, he's stepped up massively. I think that's a really good take. And you've clarified yourself much better. Yes, I think that Odegaard has improved his impact in big games. And he's turned up in matches far more consistently as a result of that. So, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Owen joins us in the chat, says, do you foresee any of the coaching staff leaving this season? They've been very impressive. I think there is potential for change. Albert Stuvenberg has been linked with a number of roles. Carlos Cuesta has also been linked with a number of roles. There's whispers and rumours about Gabriel Lense being courted somewhat by Arsenal as a potential addition to the coaching staff. We've had changes on a medical team level, of course. There's been Iqbal, I think, has joined us, and of course we've also had O'Driscoll leave for Manchester United. So yeah, I think there is expected to be change. That shouldn't come as an alarm to anybody, really. Changes in backroom staff happen relatively regularly. Coaches have ambitions. They want to coach at senior levels. They want to, go on and progress their careers by, taking the big steps. And Cuesta will have ambitions, and so will Stuvenberg, I'm sure. So it's just going to be about how Arteta, finds and replaces those individual coaches when and if he needs to. Awegbu says, Vinny Jr. is so direct. I was watching him yesterday and thinking, why can't Martinelli do this? I mean, both players have got pace and trickery. Martinelli needs to be a bit of an understudy to him and learn more from him. And he will get the chance to do that, of course, in the Brazilian national side. Gage says, do you see a world where we could offer Ramsdale plus cash for Isak or Bruno? Maybe, if there's interest from Newcastle, which there's been suggestions of, but I don't know how real it is. Maybe. Smith Rowe as well as another player that they've said to be interested in. So maybe that's features into it somehow as well. Leon says, is Hine not good enough to be our number 2? He's been at the club for years, so obviously knows what Arteta wants from him. He's a regular international, and could we not save money by promoting him? I'm not sure. The thing is, Leon, if Raya was to have a significant injury and Hine then came in, would I be confident enough that he is going to be there for pretty much the whole of the season, more so than I would say of Wojciech Szczesny coming in and doing that? I don't think so. So I think I'd rather lean towards signing more of an experienced head to take on that position. Rich says, Tom, is there anyone from Klopp's backroom staff that you'd want to poach? Maybe Linders? I don't know, really. I don't know how it would fit. I mean, I think Linders has probably ambitions of his own as well to go and coach. So I'm not sure. But if you can get a talented, Premier League experienced backroom staff member, I'm sure Arteta will be across it. Stubbs says, morning, Tom. Not a question, but what would your thoughts be on Jorginho becoming Arteta's assistant in the future? Yeah, definitely something you can see. He's doing his coaching badges, as are a number of players. Interesting, I found out the other day that David Raya has been doing some coaching badges at Arsenal as well. So it's a very, it's certainly something that we see continually. It's certainly something that that the club tries to encourage and to do with their players. So yeah, you never know. I mean, definitely, Jorginho is going to be a coach one day. He coaches practically on the sidelines when he's a sub. So I can see that without question happening. Mark says, morning, Tom. My wife and I are having a son this year. If you had to name your hypothetical son after an Arsenal legend, who would it be? She's already said no to Thierry. Oh, sorry, Mark. I don't think I would name my kid Thierry. I don't think it would. Thierry Canton, no, doesn't really work. I kind of base it on the name rather than the actual individual. Santi Canton. I don't think that really fits, does it? Santi Canton. Cesc Canton. It's not really working. Yaya Canton. Oh, goodness gracious. Granite Canton. Yeah, there's some shouts. Dennis. I'm not a big fan of the name Dennis. Big fan of Dennis Bergkamp, of course, but not not Dennis really. Martin. Eric. Yes, very good, Abby. Very good indeed. Eric. Eric is a very big shout indeed. And fair play for coming up with that. Never heard that one before. Kai Canton. I don't mind that. I quite like the alliteration in the name. It works. Kai Canton. It's quite good. Rob. Rob Canton. Indeed. Ian. Yeah, Ian Canton. I don't think it fits. Yeah. Bakayo. Yeah. Somehow I don't think that works. Gabriel. I mean, surely it's got to be Gabriel, right? Like every Arsenal fan should be naming their kids Gabriel at this point, just to keep it going. Mickey Canton. Benny Canton. Yeah. Colo Canton. Yeah, that works. Nice, Ant. Definitely picking up. Jesus Canton. Goodness gracious. These are, yeah. Get your best suggestions down in the comment section down below as to if I was to have a son or a daughter, of course, as well. You can go through the women's side. Let me know. And just to give you an indication of how realistic that is of happening, it's not. It's never going to happen. My other half's, obviously, side of the family are Charlton. Her cousin's middle name is Charlton. So if that was to happen, it would be something Arsenal Canton. That would be, yeah, I couldn't do that. Lenesra is obviously another big joke. Arsenal backwards, as an Australian man once named his child Lenesra, which is brilliant. Squadrons, imagine that. Squadron Canton. Rocky. Of course, James McNicholas named his child Rocky. Very nice. Tip of the cap, if you like, as well. Dial square, Chris. Oh dear. I think this has maybe gone off a measure. Yeah, this is going off a little bit of a tangent now, which usually is a nice place to end the show. So we're going to end it there with some very strange suggestions for my future child in an Arsenal-related sense. Thank you so much to you all for tuning in and listening. Do drop a like on the video if you could be ever so kind. It would be very much appreciated. I'll be back with you all tomorrow morning ahead of Mikel Arteta's press conference. We'll then have a preview show tomorrow as well, I think. Yes. I'll get in touch about that in the Discord server to look ahead to that game against Manchester United. Have a fantastic rest of your Thursday. I've got a day off. I say I'm going to enjoy it. I've got to do some work, got to do some portfolio stuff. So busy as always. But thank you for listening. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy, and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.